Scream 6 is directed by Tyler Gillette and Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and was released in 2023, specifically this week. And I am just home from seeing it about an hour ago. And I have some thoughts. So let's dive straight into it. I'm going to give some spoilers away probably halfway through this review. So I will flash up on screen when we're going to get into spoiler territory. So you'll have a fair warning before I kind of dive into some of the major plot points here. It's very, very spoiled online, this film, so don't let me be someone that can spoil this for you. I have a lot of notes, so you see me glancing off screen. I have thoughts and feelings. But yeah, let's just dive straight in. For those of you who just want a kind of a quick idea of how I felt, it's all right. It's okay. Yeah. And we'll come on to scores at the end. This film is okay. It's a Scream film, and with that comes probably a lot of goodwill. And I think I will always have a good time with a Scream movie. And I found over time many Scream films, I often come out quite pumped, and I quite enjoy it. And over time, I probably lose a bit of love for it. And maybe it's going to be the opposite reaction with this one, because I came out of this feeling a little flat. And that's not to say this is a bad film. I think it's entertaining. I'm grateful for these movies to be back. And I really like the fact that the Scream franchise continues. And I will always be a fan. I will always go back and watch them. I was fortunate enough tonight to see this film with my friend Ralph at Viking London on Instagram, if you want to give him a follow. And it was great just to kind of share our thoughts, because I think we both came out of it in the same sort of mindset, which it was okay. Again, fun to sort of see continuing characters, fun to sort of see it progress. But being real, it's kind of stupid. The killer reveal, yeah, there's a lot to talk about. Maybe I'll try and go through this without giving too many spoilers away, and we'll come back to it. Let me start off with the things I liked, because I think that's always nice to see. I feel like I've done a few recent reviews recently where I've been a bit of a grump, and I don't kind of want to shit on a Scream movie, because it's still really fun. It still was a really fun watch. I enjoyed the time at the cinema. It's just when you come out of it, you just think, well, hang on a minute, some of that just didn't work for me. Let's kind of figure out what that is. Fundamentally for me, characters. I think this film lives off its characters, which, bearing in mind, this is the first film without a Gale without Dewey and without Sydney. There is Gale. And I think it's kind of testament to what they did in Scream 5 that works. Because I didn't miss Dewey, I didn't miss Sydney. And I did think, controversial, I just don't think you need a Gale in this film at all. I struggled to see, because Neve Campbell didn't do the film because of money and because of issues around her contract, and it's totally fine. Like, you don't need Sydney in this. She's not missed. I actually think it would have been really odd and very, very crowbarred in if she had been. And I don't know whether they'd written the script and included her in this, and it was a whole New York thing with Sydney involved, or if Neve Campbell had been available, would they have done something completely different? I don't know the answer to that. But what I can say is that Courtney Cox / Gale Weathers is not needed in this film. She has a very kind of perfunctory role. Like, they try and make her linked to the new characters, and she doesn't. Like, there is no emotional bond there. So that's good in a way. I think the fact that you kind of go with the film without needing those legacy characters is a good sign. I think that kind of means that going forward, this franchise has legs. And when we ultimately get to Scream 7, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. And that's always the thing with these films, is they're not always great. They don't always land as greatly as they could, but they're still interesting. They still keep you moving. So I think the characters are good. You are invested in them. But we'll come on to spoilers about why I think that's a problem. The kills in this film are really good. They're really brutal. There's a real violence to them, which I find really interesting. I think if you look back to sort of Scream 1, 2, probably 3, a lot of the kills are like one stab and they're kind of done. So Sarah Darling in Scream 3, Cece in Scream 2, some of the kills in Scream 1, it's one stab, done. And the character dies very, very straight away. And again, coming on to spoilers, there's a problem in this film about the brutality of the kills doesn't always lead to what you think. So I'm going to keep that nice and vague. It's a Scream movie, as I've kind of said. That's another kind of plus. It's continuing, and there's a real joy in that. It's a beloved franchise, so it's always fun to see where it goes with it. What I did like, and again, me and Ralph spoke about this afterwards about, it didn't feel like a Scream movie. And they're like, yeah, it didn't really feel like a Scream movie. Obviously, it's not in Woodsboro. That's fine. Like, neither was Scream 3 and neither was Scream... Scream 3. It's Scream 2, which also this film is known as Scream 2, as well as being called Scream 6. It didn't feel like a Scream movie, but I quite liked that. I had a real problem, and I'm going to do a video on the Halloween reboot sort of set of series at some point about how they really just tried to mine fan nostalgia, and actually it really overshadowed what they were trying to do, because it ended up just being all member berries where we just had references to things which didn't really work. This film, I think actually they did a good job of trying to make it new and try and make it fresh and not constantly call back to fan nostalgia and do it for what fans wanted. It felt like, a fresh new kind of concept. Loved Kirby coming back. I thought they actually did a pretty good job with her in terms of where she went and that character arc. And there's also kind of generic cute guy, boyfriend of Sam, who I quite enjoyed. And I think the film's greatest strength is there are some really, really strong set pieces here. So there are moments in the cinema, and I'm a bit of an overthinker. I'll be thinking about work and I'll be thinking about other things. I'm suffering massively with a toothache right now. So I'm in there, my tooth is pounding, and I'm thinking about other things. There were times in this film where I had to kind of go, oh, hang on a minute. I haven't thought about anything else. And I don't want to talk too much about those set pieces because you'll see the film and you'll kind of get it. And I'll go into that in the spoiler part of the review. But yeah, there are some great moments where you're really like, tense, and you kind of don't know what's going to happen. And I really enjoyed that. So those are the things that I liked about the film. I'm going to be honest, I think if I start talking about the things that I like less, we're probably going to skip into spoiler territory. So that's what I liked about it. And I would say from this point forward, you're probably going to get a spoiler or two if you keep listening. So I'll come on to scores at the end. If you want to whip to like the last minute of this review, I will give you my score, and then you can be on your merry way, and we can talk about it in the comments. So, what did I like less about this film? First one, nobody dies. And I'm being glib. Clearly, there is a high. Apparently, this is the highest body count. Apparently, there were 15 people died. I don't know where 15 people died, but they were none of the main characters. We actually, I think, had more killers die in this film than we had any main characters. And it's really odd, and I'm mulling on this, but they really teased a lot of main characters actually going to die. Like, were they going to do Gail? Were they going to do Mindy? Were they going to do Chad? Were they going to do either of the girls? And the answer in pretty much every single case was no. And these people are brutally attacked. Like, when I talk about the early Scream movies, people dying from one stab, these people are being stabbed or whatever multiple times, and it's a tricky one. I spoke at the beginning about the characters. You really like them, and there is an element of like, oh, good, I'm really glad that person hasn't died, but you've got to kill someone. And you've got to kind of take a bit of a swing. Like Scream 1, Tatum's a great character. You really like her. You go, you're kind of on board with her character. And she dies. And that's fine because it's a horror film. Nobody dies in this film. And actually, I grabbed Ralph afterwards, and that was my first comment. We were sitting separately in the cinema. So I went and found him at the end and just was like, Ralph, nobody died. There were no, key characters. So the only real characters that died that weren't killers were either peripheral characters that we'd kind of just met and didn't really care about. And that's kind of it. So it's a bit of a cop-out. And it feels like they really did. It feels a bit like the filmmakers have just really fallen in love with the characters they've made, which is great. Like, testament to the world building and what they've done with it. But you just got to be a bit braver. And it now makes me think, like, for Scream 7... well, they're either all going to die. We can't go through what we went through in Scream 6 again because these characters are just insane at this point. It's a case of please leave town because, yeah, I could go on this way, but it's a very strange dynamic because, as I said, you end up with 5 killers dying, and I would say 2 characters with stakes. And I guess that's the problem, is it becomes a very low stakes film because you just start to think, actually, no one's going to die. And again, the trauma that is inflicted on people. I mean, there's one character, and again, I don't need to spoil this because you can go see it yourself and you'll know who I'm talking about if you've seen the film. One of these characters is almost to the point where you think they're dead, like they're definitely gone. And then they spring into frame at the end of the film. Like they bound on, they're walking and they're joking about stuff. And you're like, no. You are in intensive care in a hospital at this point. Like that character died, nearly. So the fact that she's there, and they do that thing that a lot of Scream films do where characters get really, really injured. They either get shot or they get stabbed. And then they're just in an ambulance with a little blanket around them at the end and everything's fine. And I guess this is the problem with Scream movies is because it's a sort of meta parody, is that supposed to be the thing? Is that the point? That, it's kind of, is it funny that they're there in a little blanket and they're fine, even though they've been stabbed in the abdomen and they would be nearly dead? And we've seen them, to the point where we think, oh, that character's definitely gone. And then we see them in the next scene where, oh, they're fine, they're talking, they're probably going to be all right. And I think this is the thing with Scream, like they either die straight away, like they get stabbed and they're dead, or they're stabbed a lot, really brutally, and then we go back to it later and, oh, lo and behold, they're all right. I just think that's a problem. And it just starts to make me very distrustful then of the next film because you're like, here we go again. And also, I just don't know if I want to watch some of these characters die because they're kind of nice. Also, I got to say, my least favourite part of the Scream franchise as a whole, I just think the killer reveals aren't great. I think most of the films kind of fall apart when it gets to the reveal. Because, again, I know it's meta, I know it's the Scream universe, and maybe it's supposed to be this, but the tenuousness that the characters have to become killers, it's not like it's got more ridiculous. Every film, apart from Scream 1, I think, has been quite tenuous. And this is very much a copy of Scream 2 in terms of the motivations about why the characters are doing certain things. And again, I just think that's a bit of an issue. It's the problem with the franchise generally is that you really have to suspend disbelief that anyone would want to kill Sidney Prescott, who's a very perfectly lovely person, and then 2, like Sam and Tara are not bad people, and yet they're now becoming the new Sydney, where everyone wants to kill them for some very tenuous unknown reason. And the reveal here was just a bit like, okay, fine. It kind of fulfilled the ending. But in terms of this being a realistic and like fascinating reason why this person's going to kill them, not really. I mean, we've seen this before, and it kind of taps into that Scream 3 whiny bitch syndrome like we had with Roman Bridger, where you're like, oh, come on, like, what's your problem? So I think it's a thing about Scream generally. I think that the killer reveals are never as good as the rest of the film. And like Ghostface in this is just superhuman. Like so many times you're like, well, you've been punched in the face, you've been hit around the face with a frying pan. Literally happens. It's not even a slapstick thing. There are Chad at one point is like beating the shit out of one of the ghost faces. They never take the masks off. They never take them when they're down. And again, I'm starting to think like Scream 1 was meta. I get it. But by Scream 6, like the characters are doing the stupid things that we're told that the characters shouldn't do. Again, problem, it becomes low stakes. There is no risk to some of the main characters and the Ghostface. You could do anything to Ghostface and he will just get up and keep going. And again, in this one, we never quite know which one's which. And yeah, you'll know what I'm talking about if you've seen it. What else? Yeah, I think it takes quite a few. It takes very few risks, I would say, and they're really gonna have to switch that up for the next film and make it feel scary because it just never did. And now that they've done that, they're gonna have to kind of work on that for the next one. A couple of other minor points. Samara Weaving, I fucking love Samara Weaving. I think she's a wonderful actress. She's been awesome in everything. I hated Babysitter Killer Queen after loving The Babysitter, but she's still really good in it. And she was great in Ready or Not. And they throw her away like she is the first victim. And it's kind of like, you did that to Samara Weaving? Like, I was kind of gutted. Not necessarily a bad thing, because maybe at least it was some peril, at least it was some risk. And yeah, she's great. And I love that she was Australian and they didn't make her change her accent. And she's great. So I don't know if that's a criticism or not. I just thought it was a shame that we only got 5 minutes of Samara Weaving because she's really, really charismatic. And I feel like she would have been a fun character. And then the last thing, and again, this goes back to the whole, is Scream being meta and fucking with me? Or is this just a really weird quirk? This film is Jason Takes Manhattan, Friday the 13th, Part 7. So the criticism of that film was it makes a big deal about being set in New York, but actually it's 90% filmed in Canada. It was hard to know whether this film was parodying Jason Takes Manhattan or it just did it by accident. I would love to think, and I really hope it was a parody because they're playing the film in the opening sequence. So it's got to be a joke because at the end I was like, it was filmed in Canada? Are you kidding me? Jason Takes Manhattan was literally filmed in Canada and they peppered in a couple of little skyline shots. And I think that would be my reflection is there's quite a lot made in the press about Scream 6 being set in New York. It kind of is. There's like the subway scene, the bodega scene, but it's kind of surface level. Like it doesn't make much of a difference. It probably could have been any generic city. That said, I quite liked the setting, and I think that did feed into why it felt quite fresh because it wasn't just back to Woodsboro like we've seen. So I'm intrigued to see where they go in Scream 7 and where that's going to be set. Anyway, I'm rambling now. Look, it's a Scream movie. It's fun. I will always be grateful that these exist, and I will probably rewatch it. That said, I think a lot of the Scream films don't have a great rewatch. I loved Scream 5, and I've seen it since, and it's fine. It's not necessarily one I'm going to go back and watch. All I will say is I left Scream 5 really buzzing. I loved it. I thought the meta commentary was great, and although it hasn't necessarily held up since I've watched it, it's still a fun film. I didn't come out of this film buzzing. I didn't come out of it feeling like, oh, that was a real treat and a real reboot. And that's fine. You know, it's a 6th movie in a film at this point. Let's not be too kind of demanding about what we're expected to see. But I would say the meta commentary in this wasn't great. I think it's only a year on since the last film. Had the filmmakers got much to say about the horror movies of 2023? Probably not. Like we did all the elevated horror stuff, all the recall stuff in Scream 5, which I loved. I thought it was really, really good. And Mindy's character was great. I like that she gets her moment in this, but this is not as good as some of the other films. That meta-ness, I think, weakens, as we go. So anyway, it's late. I've rambled on a lot. I'm going to give this film a 6. It feels quite harsh, and I may revise that. I'm going to look to do probably a Scream franchise ranking video in the next few months. I don't know where it sits in the franchise, and I might be more charitable in time when I've had a chance to mull over it. I've only been, I've only finished this maybe 2 hours ago. So it's a 6. If I say 3 out of 5, why does that sound less harsh? 3 out of 5, 6 out of 10, whatever. I'm obviously going to recommend it. It's Scream. It's part of a franchise. But there's a lot that, doesn't quite work for me. So anyway, that was Scream 6. Enjoy. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like and subscribe as always. And I'll catch you in the next one.